Warriors of Peace, a series of conversations with men who've been tested, exploring strength, restraint, and the craft of becoming. Cool. All right. Welcome to my humble studio.
Oh, this is awesome. I love it. I love the backdrop. The
Backdrop? Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So this
And the ambience and the ocean is just out the back there.
So Joe Zollo, welcome to
Pleasure to see you, brother.
yeah, welcome to the Yudhaversity. I met you a long time ago. I was thinking back. It was about 25 years ago at Croydon Community School.
That's right.
A school that you'd set up a martial arts program. You were working with students that had some difficulties at other schools. They were ADHD kids or kids with emotional dysregulation and stuff like that. And you were already working with them. And I came and met you, and I was just like blown away with the stories of Joe. And so you have done a lot of things.
It was actually an honor and a pleasure to have you, because it was good to have a teacher that would actually engage, participate, and even spar with some of those young guys. So that was quite an exciting time, wasn't it?
It was so much fun. Yeah, it was so much fun. I had such great memories. And so some of the stories were things like you were a professional wrestler. Back in the day, you were a power lifter, you were a bodybuilder, you were
never a bodybuilder, but yes, a powerlifter.
You did do strongman competitions though.
Yeah, for a time.
Like even on TV, there was one time.
Yeah.
And obviously you're working as a social worker. So since then, a psychologist and teacher. So highly credentialed to come on here and talk about how we can find ways to help people to come through any difficult times. Yeah, which is what I've been doing. It's what these videos are about. So your story, you have told me there is difficulties at the start.
Yeah.
And you have worked through them, and you've got lots of experiences about how you can
with those difficult times. Go back to our time when we met.
Yeah.
I was working as a youth worker, working in schools, trying to engage disconnected young people that were aggressive. So my forte was work with kids who have learning disabilities, ADHD, issues with the justice system, addictions, mental health issues, and all those 5 things I dealt with as a young person myself, as a teenager. And martial arts was, I guess, pivotal in helping me manage, control, live with these conditions. So when I eventually became a youth worker, because I wanted to make a difference and help those who were in my situation, I wanted to be what someone was to me for other people. So my martial arts teacher had a profound impact on my life. So that's how it sort of all began. So Croydon Community, I guess, was the GenZ of the program, this martial arts therapy program that is going, that is still going in various different forms by others who are trained and have perpetuated and replicated the program. It's about providing a space for young people to expend, the energy, but learn self-control. But more importantly, learn a code, a way of behavior, a way of being that is based on Japanese martial arts. Bushido. I don't know whether you've heard of Bushido, which loosely translates to warrior's way. Bushido, Bushi means warrior, Do means the way. So it's warrior's way, or we refer to it as the way of the warrior. But there's another component in there. When it's expanded in greater depth, it actually means the way of the virtuous warrior, or the way of the warrior guided by certain virtues, certain ways of being. And I find that young people need a code. We're not just young people, that adults. Now I use this program for adults, and it works with them. They need a code, a way of being to control their behavior and their mind. So that's how it sort of all began. And it just grew. And I've continued to do that over the years.
Yeah. So the martial arts therapy program, that's what you'd started there when I first met you. And that's as you said, that's continued on. And there's what I saw straight away was I'd come from martial arts training, but it was, to be honest, it was training with people that didn't have so many emotional needs. And what I saw was that there was a lot of aggression that I hadn't met before with some of these guys that you were working. And from your own experience, what you've told me, you've seen how you can work with aggression. And I think there is positives in aggression, but you have to know how to channel it
if it's expressed appropriately. You know, so aggression. I was told that aggression is a powerful motivating force. Sometimes we need that sort of level of aggression to overcome a difficult situation or an insurmountable sort of task. You know, to get over that hill, to overcome that that situation. You need that aggression to push you, to drive you when you feel overwhelmed and feel sort of, I can't do this. Often that aggression takes you to, it is an emotion. It is an energy that drives you if you know how to channel it. You know? But getting back to the beginning, I went to a martial arts school in order to learn to protect myself, because when I entered high school, I was bullied. I was a frail kid. I hadn't quite, puberty hadn't kicked in yet. So I was a little smaller, a little skinnier, a little more fragile than some of the bigger, rougher boys in my year level. And I felt victimized and bullied. And eventually I was bullied to the point where I was bashed, hospitalized. It took me a long time to come back to school. And when I came back, I really struggled with the ridicule, the victimization, the abuse. So I sought out, you know, someone that could help me. And eventually, it's a long story, but I went to a martial arts school in order to learn to kick ass. I just wanted to be strong. I no longer wanted to be bullied. I had this pent-up frustration that would sometimes express itself inappropriately and cause me a great deal of grief and impact on my relationship with my family. But my original intentions to pursue the art of, you know, of fighting is to beat people up, to no longer be a victim, but should be in control of the scenario, the situation. But the journey, my martial arts journey actually changed me, because I began with judo, and judo is the gentle way. It's about using someone's force against them or redirecting negative force or negative energy. I also learned karate, and there was a Bushido component in that. So inadvertently, I learned to become more of a virtuous man. I learned self-control. I learned self-respect. I learned to respect others. I learned, I guess, the code of the warrior. I learned what it meant to be an honorable man. And honor is missing in our society. Like you can't trust people because they're not honorable, you know? And there's no loyalty. So in martial arts, you learn loyalty. You learn to understand that you with this skill, you can hurt people, but you don't use it indiscriminately. You begin to learn that this strength that you gain, these abilities and skills, which are quite deadly, are to be used not only in self-defense, but to protect. So I learned a sense of justice. I learned that it is important to do the right thing for the right reason, irrespective of where you are, who's watching or who's not watching. So that was a change that began to occur in me. So as I entered the building trade, carpenter, concreter, I found that those skills, but not just those skills, that code kept me focused, kept me strong. Where I would have normally have gone the other way, I chose the right path because of the teaching and the training that I had. And so subsequently, once I became a youth worker, I was able to use these skills and embed them into my curriculum. And also, I realized there was a space for martial arts in the human services sector, even though there was a lot of resistance initially. It was once said that teaching teenage boys martial arts, particularly teenage boys who were out of control, volatile, like some of the young people that you and I worked with at the Korean community. It was like it was akin to giving machine guns to Neanderthals. because they would use this power indiscriminately to abuse. But the reverse happened. They learned self-control. And we saw that. Though those individuals who are identified as volatile, aggressive, began to learn self-control, discipline, a sense of justice, a sense of honor, and also compassion for those weaker than themselves. They realized some of those boys, you know who I'm talking about in particular, he's very strong, very powerful. And I work with him and helping to understand that he was blessed with this great skill, this great physical strength. But with this skill, with this power, comes a responsibility to protect, to enable others to feel safe, to grow, to be nurtured. And he took that on board and changed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it was great. And do you, I've sort of come to sort of see that aggression or volatility. I mean, I had a lot of volatility when I understand what you're talking about as well. But and it was martial arts that gave me exactly the same story, gave me that discipline. But I look back and I felt similar to what you said, a sense of powerlessness.
Yeah.
And that's really where my lack of control was. Do you see that a lot? Is that a common theme that people want to have a sense of, well, I feel injustice, or I feel like I want something to be different, and I am powerless to do it, so I will just explode, or I even will internalize, and maybe, the violence turns inner.
Look, I certainly I've seen that in my own life. I see that in the lives of the young men that I work with and the older men that I work with now. And in martial arts, you actually learn to master or control the things that you have control over, and to accept the things that you have no control over.
Yeah.
But you learn to choose not to allow those things to affect you. But yes, when we're in a lot of the young people that we work with, and that I'm still currently working with, they lack control over circumstances, and that lack of control, that lack of agency or capacity to do anything, to bring about any change, causes a great deal of frustration, and it expresses itself as anger, and then it's externalized in relationships. Both in the work and in personal relationships, in intimate relationships, in the workplace, at school, and it's detrimental and destructive. So it's about learning first to control you. Like, for example, I had a very messy room. I was disorganized, and my martial arts teacher began to sort of instill in us, master the things that you have control over. Do your bed, tidy your stuff, brush your teeth, comb your hair. Not that I need to worry about that now. If you have control over those little things, you begin to not be so affected by the bigger world, the bigger things outside of yourself that you feel you have no control over. You can control your emotions. If you can control the choices you make. Our emotions cloud our thinking. Like, as you know, when we're angry or when we're depressed, we make a decision that's clouded by that emotion, and the consequences of that decision could be disastrous. So if you can master that emotion, master it, redirect it, contain it, and express it appropriately, then we have clarity over the next step we take, the next words we speak, the path we walk upon. So having control over those little things, we're no longer affected by the world outside of ourselves as much as we were. We're able to almost change or reframe that reality. There's this sense of, I can control me, and this is what I have power over. I can control how I feel. I can control how I think. And so I choose to not allow that thing to impact on me. So in a sense, you gain control firstly over self, and then over the external forces around you. Even though people think you don't have control, you actually do. You have the power to control how that affects you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I should have said before that, so in my preamble, that was, I guess, more the starting point, but more recently, you're not just a teacher, but you're a awarded teacher. You've was it Chisholm? Was it teacher of the year, which is congratulations. It's fantastic when I read that. And so obviously psychology, what you're talking about is not just from personal experience, but it's all documented and evidence-based. And there is, and what I'm interested in is that, and I think that people don't understand this, or especially young people, of course, as they're not old enough.
Yeah.
But life moves in stages, and developmental stages, and time is so important.
Yeah.
And when you're young, you don't realize that things do change.
Yeah.
And you might be stuck in this way of thinking right now, but if you even just the passage of time or things change in your body, and you do start thinking differently, if you just let go a little bit, don't grab onto that thing that's right in this moment. Exactly what you're talking about. Just able to let things be a little bit more. Yeah. So that development is interesting.
Time is a teller of all things. I was once told, and I've said that many times. Over time, clarity becomes, crystal clear. Well, sorry, as time progresses, you become more aware of who you are and what you want to do. But the problem is, who we are and how we see ourselves is a construct, and you see it at school. I saw it when I worked in the state school system when I was working as a youth worker. Now working in Chisholm and higher ed, teaching in community services and teaching sociology, site-based subjects, mental health, the substance addiction. A lot of people are the product of forces outside of themselves. So what we hear, the narrative, the stories that people tell us, we internalize and we become that story. So my aim is to help people be the authors of their own story. So that's really it. And to also realize if they don't choose a way or a code, it will be chosen for them. I once encountered a youth worker through my difficult times who said this to me. He said, I want you to think about who you want to be. And I go, what? Why is that important? He said, because if you don't choose who you want to be, the type of person you want to be, the type of man you want to be, you'll become what others expect of you. And at that time, I had become, you become like the people you hang around with. And I was hanging out with a group of individuals who were engaging in cool activities and physical confrontations with other groups. And I was continually called upon in those spaces and in those situations. And I found that I was fighting battles or in confrontation with people I had no beef with, but it was expected of me to be part of the group, part of the gang. So I had become not who I wanted to be, but who others expected me to be. And I realized this is a theme in all of us. At the end of the day, we have become who others say we are, unless we define what that looks like. And at that time of that revelation, I asked him, well, how do I know who I want to be? How do I do this? He said, look to the people you admire. So I began to look at individuals that I admired, both in history and literature, like Miyamoto Musashi, great samurai warrior from the 16th century. Bruce Lee, of course, my mother. He said, look at those characters or those individuals. What is it that you admire about them? My mother, I admired her strength, her inner strength, her compassion. Being an immigrant, coming to this country as a 19-year-old with a little baby, i.e. me, dealing with harsh conditions because you're living in a farm without heating or electricity. So we had candles, we had, we cooked over a fire, pretty harsh conditions, but she was so stoic. So I learned stoicism through my mother. I learned compassion, and I learned the meaning of unconditional love. I saw her demonstrate unconditional love to those who I felt didn't deserve to be treated with respect and love. And she said, no, that's their issue. It's important that I treat them this way. So she lived by a code that instilled in me. And of course, I learned the the way of the warrior through characters like Miyamoto Musashi, through my martial arts teacher, through my youth worker. And I began to realize that what I think, what I say and what I think drives my actions. And my actions began to construct a character. My character began to be formed by what I did and what I thought and what I said. And ultimately, that created who I am today. So that creates your destiny. So that connection became more real. In my youth worker, my martial arts teacher would share this with me, but it didn't quite make sense until I experienced it. And of course, studying psychology, sociology, mental health, anthropology, this sort of made sense. It became more alive. So, and that's what I endeavored to do. So if you're not working a program will work you.
Yeah.
I think it was Russell Brand who said that when he talked about the 12-step program when he overcame his addictions. So what that meant is that you are the product of who you think you are by what others have said. If you don't decide and choose a way will choose you based on who you're with. So you become like the people you're with. We saw that. Remember when kids would come into high school?
Yeah.
They're almost like they're playing. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but they're just a school kid,
Yeah.
And then they begin to morph into either a goth or an emo or alternative, creative, or a heavy or someone who's in a footy or a yobbo. They begin to gravitate to those who they feel a kinship with or a need to be accepted by, and they begin to morph and change. Their hairstyles change. They start to get ink on their body that is reminiscent of that particular culture. It might be music. Kids who are somewhat talented will begin to, we saw that occur, and they will eventually morph to those who are into music, and they'll start, into not just into the music. The music changes them in terms of how they think because of the words, and their clothing, their body artwork will be reminiscent of that culture. When I worked in schools where there were a lot of Latinos, they all wanted to be gangsters. Yo, yo, yo. I lived next door to a person who rode motorcycles, and his brother was in a notorious motorcycle club. And so that was part of my journey too. I got myself a bike and I began to ride, Harleys, and began to gravitate towards that scene. And I started to, go to events and venues, and I began to morph, into this individual. Yeah, that was very different from that little Italian boy in year 7 that was, had curly, buffy hair and big ears, and very intimidated by the slightest little sort of sense of aggression or ridicule, to morphing into this biker, and then hanging out in Carlton, and becoming different again. You become like the people you hang around with, and I see this a lot.
Yeah.
So you become like the people you hang around with, and you adopt that way of thinking, those acceptable ways of behavior. You partake of certain substances, you do certain things that is accepted or expected of you. Unless you choose a path, unless you choose a way of being, a way that is virtuous, a way that is righteous, a way that is moral. So that's what the way of the warrior is really about. If I could just sort of spend a few minutes talking about the way of the warrior. I think it applies to our culture today. See, a warrior firstly needs to be loyal. Loyalty is really big in Japanese culture, as you know, and I believe, well, I'm Italian, so it's pretty big in our culture as well. Sometimes you become loyal to its detriment. Do you know what I mean? You become loyal to something that is not right. So, but firstly, loyalty. Who do you serve? As a warrior, you need to know, who do you serve? You serve the shogunate, or, your king, whatever. A warrior would serve their king. But you as a young, I thought myself as a young person, who do I serve? And even as an adult, who do I serve? For me, firstly, my children, I serve my children now and my grandchildren. What that means is I'm there for them. I provide space for them to feel safe, to feel nurtured, to feel empowered. I do it for their mother. I do it for my mother, my roommate who's still alive. I do it for my brother and my sister. I do it for my colleagues at work, and I do it for the community. We have a responsibility to serve others, to protect, to empower those of us who have a gift. Like if you're a musician, your duty is to, your duty in a sense is to express that creativity, to make people
provide joy and
to feel joy
inspiration.
and inspiration.
Yeah.
If you're a healer, then you have a responsibility and a duty and a commitment to heal. If you're a protector, you have a responsibility to protect. So your loyalty sort of emerges through who you are. And then there is once you know who you serve and what your place in this world is, and what your place is and what you're meant to do is connected to who you are internally. I mean, we all feel that. You're very creative. So for you, you have a need to express that. And you use that as a way of expressing that inner creative energy, but it also brings joy to others. It creates a backdrop for us. If you're a healer, if you're a musician, if you're a builder, you construct. People find joy in doing what they know is an expression of who they are. Then you also, as a warrior, or when you follow the way of the warrior, you also need to be guided by certain principles. Like loyalty is important, but also integrity. Integrity. Be a person of integrity. That means you do the right thing for the right reasons, not in order to gain, but in order to help others to grow and to evolve and be the best versions of themselves. Compassion, to show kindness, to show unconditional positive regard, because that's how you change people, by giving them unconditional positive regard, by accepting them, respecting them, not because they deserve it, but because they're a human being. Of course, that respect, can change depending on what they do. The big one too, as a warrior, is self-control. Self-control. If you can't, as I indicated before, if you can't control the monster inside of yourself, then that could be dangerous. Many people will let fly. A lot of men can't control their emotions, and as a result, they damage their children, they destroy their relationships, and they cause irreparable damage from, it'll echo into future generations. Many men that I work with are damaged, so damaged because their fathers weren't present, their fathers were inconsistent and didn't regulate their emotion. So self-control means that you are consistent, you are predictable. You need people that are predictable in your life. My father was unpredictable, so I didn't want to be like him. He was very volatile, very controlled by his emotions. But my mother was predictable. I always knew how she was going to respond. And that gave me a sense of security. But my father was very volatile. I never knew how he was going to react from day to day. He was like the Melbourne weather, all emotions in one day. And it was horrible and it was uncomfortable. So as a warrior, you need self-control. You also need to have a sense of diligence, to be able to work hard, not recklessly, but intelligently. You also need to have courage. Courage requires you to face your inner demons. It requires you to do what needs to be done despite the fear that thing will engender. They're some of the key principles that guide us in this way of being that is connected to the way of the warrior. And those virtues are embedded in every culture. Colleagues of mine who've done research in virtues have identified that there are these 7 foundational virtues, not just in Bushido, but in every culture, in the East, the West, the Middle Eastern culture, all cultures and faith systems. All the faith systems also have these virtues and codes embedded into them in one form or another. So it's universal.
Yeah. It's really interesting. We were talking before a little bit about how young people today, I think it's as confusing a time as ever, probably more confusing than we were younger, because some of these systems are questioned now. And we, at least when we were young, a fair while ago now, but when we were young, we kind of knew what our roles were going to be. We could rebel against them.
Yeah.
And I did, you did, but we knew what the standard roles were. But today, these roles are no longer as defined. And I see a lot of, I work with young men, so these videos are aimed at young men, but it's young men and women, and everything in between, who no longer have these, I guess, strong ideas of what it is that they're meant to do, so that then they can choose whether to do that or not.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Have you seen things like that?
Yeah. Look, I remember having a chat with my father and my uncle in their latter years. So both in their 90s at the time. And they were concerned about the state of masculinity or manhood in our society. And they felt sorry. They actually echoed their concerns. They said in their time, they knew how to be, they knew how to behave. This was the acceptable way for a man to behave. This was the acceptable way for a woman to behave. Now, I do remember challenging that, because I felt that was archaic and oppressive, and it was a social construct. Yes, they were Italian men, so there were some biases there. But it made me think. They had a code, they had a way of being. It gave them a sense of security, so they knew the rules of the game. Young people today, I guess everything is open. Everything is open. People can be who they want to be, which is both a sense of freedom and a journey of exploration. But at the same time, without having a way of being or a code to guide their journey, they become lost and they lose their way. Many young people are losing their way because they don't know who to be. Like the young men that I work with, they don't know how to behave. They don't know how to be because no one teaches them. They see a lot of behavior that is toxic, and often we equate masculinity with toxicity, but I like to look at behavior as being, certain behavior as being toxic, irrespective of whether that person is a male or a female, or identifies as a male and female. I guess the point that I'm making is we now don't know how to be, so there is freedom to be who we want to be. But often people search for identity leads them into dangerous waters. They don't have a code. They don't have safety nets. They don't have scaffolding to protect them as they explore who they are. They don't know what it means to be, masculine, or yin and yang, masculine, feminine energy. That's what it means. Each one of us has that balance of masculine and feminine energy. There are traits in the masculine, there are traits in the feminine that need to be balanced out within each one of us. And sometimes that is rejected. It's often said that masculinity, femininity are purely social constructs. But the work I've done, or the journeys I've been with those that have transitioned, my students, my clients who have transitioned and have changed their identity, not just physically, but also internally in terms of hormone, introduction of various hormones, I've noticed a change. So there is a relationship between hormones, neurotransmitters as a result, and behavior and attitude. So there is a strong connection. And there is a need, I guess, to have a code that guides that behavior. Do you know what I mean? Like being an honorable person, irrespective of how you identify, is really key, is important. Having self-control, irrespective of how you identify, is really important. Being compassionate, irrespective of how you identify, is really important. Being reliable is important. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are non-negotiables that young people have lost because there's this endless pursuit to change and transition and be this, and then I'll be happy. Often it's a lie. People will transition, and yes, gender dysphoria is very real. It's scientifically proven, and I've certainly worked with people who don't feel right in their own body, and I'll support them in their journey, but I'll also instill those codes, those ways of being, that sense of honor, that sense of justice, that sense of compassion, that sense of self-control. Just because you're transitioning and changing, it doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want.
No.
And this is the problem. A lot of people feel like I can be whoever I want to be. I can do whatever I want, however and whenever I want. Yeah. And that can be disastrous, because now if someone identifies as a thief, well, then do we allow them to choose that path? Okay, go and thief. There's a really nice house there.
Yeah.
If I identify as a cold-blooded killer, do we respect that? Because I've worked with people coming out of prison and in prison who identify as killers, who identify as crims. That's their identity. Do you know what I'm saying? There has to be some standards. There has to be some moral codes where some behavior is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And this is a difficult one. So we have lost how to be, but the way of the warrior teaches you self-respect and respect of others. So I remember my martial arts instructor said something really profound. He said, "It is really important that you fear no one, fear no man or fear no one, but respect all life." So if people were to embody that simple truth, things would be much better. Yeah. Also, the warrior code teaches courtesy, respect, patience, compassion. So those characteristics, if they are there and whoever you decide to be, then the world is going to be a better place. So that's what I'm saying. So, I've worked with some trans people who are some trans men who were formerly, of course, biologically women, who are now on hormone therapy, and they're struggling with the aggression that is the result of the testosterone. So this way of the warrior program, this self-control, this self-discipline, has been really instrumental in helping them contain this new, not contain, but master this new way of being for them. So,
which that
hopefully that sort of makes sense what I'm saying.
Absolutely, yeah. And what I thought as you were speaking was, so one of the things that we have lost a little bit of sight of with, and it's not just the freedom of sexual boundaries or sexuality or gender identification, but it's people request freedom in almost every way now.
Yeah.
And so what it does also, as much as perhaps people felt oppressed in the past, and too restricted, and I can say even I felt restricted. It was very difficult to be creative. And you should do it like this. Okay, so I understand rebelling against. Yeah. But at the same time, if you have complete freedom, then you never question what you need to change inside. Yeah. You just keep saying, well, they have to change for me. And so there is a real sense of I think with young people that they don't realize sometimes that you do have to do a lot of inner work. That's what life is. Actually happiness and peace. Peace comes at the end of a big struggle, and you just keep working on yourself.
Doing the work. Yeah. Not many people are prepared to do the work. Put in the hard yards to do the work, the inner work. Because human beings, I have noticed, and I'm guilty of this as well, certainly, particularly in the past, we seek pleasure. We are wired to seek pleasure, avoid pain, right? We seek that which alters our consciousness, alters our reality, because, we like to, disconnect from reality, because sometimes reality is harsh and hard. We seek the path of least resistance. Now, sometimes that is essential. Bruce Lee, in his writings, talked about there were two paths that are before us. There is the easy path and there is the hard path. And I also talked to a UFC fighter who was given was given another version of this. He says there are two options. You can either push this wheelbarrow up that hill full of bricks or rocks, or you can take the easy way and take the lift up the hill. Which would you choose? The obvious choice is to choose the lift, correct? But in the case of this individual, he chose the wheelbarrow to push the rocks because he was a UFC fighter and had a fight coming up. So time under tension, putting his body under stress is what he needed in order to complete a task that he had before him to achieve his goal. Does that make sense? But if you're going up to that hill to meet someone, your loved one or whatever, then you want the quickest path up there, a path that doesn't exhaust you, doesn't tax you. So there are times when we follow the path of least resistance and there are times when we don't. Bruce Lee said in a real fight, he would throw a straight punch to someone's nose, the path of least resistance for maximum effect. But in the movies, he would do these fancy spinning kicks that required a lot of energy, and the error, the possibility of error was increased, right? But it looked good. It looked good for
sold movies.
It sold movies. So there are times when we take the easy path, and there are times when we take the hard path. And to do work, to control our inner stuff or our inner shit, that takes work, and that requires time under tension. That requires taking the hard path, to look in, to accept, to address, to take ownership of what I did and what I said. That was destructive. That outcome was no good. Rather than saying, oh, F them, no, what I did, I'm a cause of that. I destroyed my relationship with my wife, and I took ownership of that. And now over the years, I've made amends and we've been able to rectify that. But in those early days, I blamed her. You didn't give me what I wanted. And I thought to myself, is that what being a warrior is? No, own my shit. What did I do? And I examined what I did, and I began to change my behavior and my attitude that caused that destruction. So I had to do the work, and it took a lot of healing, a lot of growth, because a lot of it was rooted in my past, So there's a lot of stuff. Now, I know people sometimes want quick, easy solutions. Sometimes we need to go back because we've been shaped by those things that happened in the past, and they write our story. It's almost like we can't go back in time, but we can here and rewrite how that thing affected us. I was damaged by things that happened in the past. So I can become a victim. I can become a victim or a slave to that event. I am nothing but what happened then, or I can choose to rewrite the narrative. That thing was bad, what happened to me, but it strengthened me. I am who I am today because of that. I accepted that was wrong. Someone did something to me that was not acceptable, was destructive, hurtful. I am no longer that person. I am stronger as a result, and I'm able now to understand and hear people's inner pain because of my own pain. So that it's no longer a negative, but it's a positive. I've turned it into a positive. So you rewrite the story of your past in order to rewrite your future. So the lens from which you view the future is often shaped by our failures, our fears, our trauma in the past, and we can't appreciate the present because we're ruminating about what happened and what's going to happen. Oh, it's not going to work. I'm going to fail because I failed in the past. No, rather than seeing a future as an opportunity for adventure, for growth, exploration, more wonder, more things to do, to create. For whatever time we have upon the earth, we have to be mindful of what can I do to make this place better? Who can I touch? Who can I impact on? Who can I influence to be a better person, to achieve their potential? I was once asked in a workshop, when I began this journey, it was like a psychoeducation group. I was asked, so what is your goal in life? I remember thinking, shit, I got no idea. And then a thought came to me, and I responded by saying, to change the world. And I remember the facilitator having a smirk on their face and thinking, yeah, okay, so how are you going to do that? And I responded without thinking, I'm going to do that one person at a time.
Yeah.
I was, okay.
Yeah.
Elaborate. Well, I was treated with respect and unconditional positive regard. Someone believed in me, and that helped change me. I'm going to do the same. Everyone I encounter, I'm going to treat them with respect, dignity, encourage them, treat them with unconditional positive regard, and help them to be the best version of themselves. That's how you change the world. You change individuals that you meet along the way, and ultimately that changes the world. And that has stuck with me, and that's what I do to this very day, and I'll continue to do.
I remember us talking about this once before, and I've had a similar experience, and when I look back, I found I was very, very lucky to find a mentor who was a martial arts teacher, and at that time I didn't realize, but I had pretty much I felt a real powerlessness, and I have my own experience, and very similar to you, I've managed to turn my life around, and now I offer that to as many people as I can, one person at a time. It's what I even wrote at the start of these videos. If I can help one person with one of the words on one of these videos, then it's all worth it. So I love that story that you just told. But I'm really curious, because we've talked a lot about positives, and there is, and I know that you've also mentioned to me that you understand that there is crisis, and you've felt that, and it actually, that's what I was alluding to, is that I was feeling that, and then I was very lucky to find someone just at the right time. And so when someone is feeling like they can't see the reason to keep that hard work, oh my God, it's just too hard. It's too much for me. What's your advice for that?
I work with people in crisis all the time, and what we encourage them is to reach out. In the 12-step program that I experienced as a recipient of that program, and also, I've taken elements of that. One of the first steps is acknowledging that you can't do it on your own. You need something greater than yourself, whether it's some higher power, or whether it's an individual, whether it's friends, or whether it's a counselor, seeking others, because if we could have done it on our own, we would have done it already. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
There are times, even myself, where I can't do it on my own. I need to seek the guidance and the support, the encouragement, the validation, the love of other people. So seek help. It is out there. Knowing who to go to. Sometimes when you're ready, the teacher will come. You and I talked about that many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The teacher will come. And there is truth in that. Whenever I was struggling with something, but I was ready for the next step, I would meet someone who would help me transition through that trauma, through that crisis. And I've been through many, and I've supported many who have gone through crisis.
It's interesting you said that, because what was coming up before as well when you were talking about change, is that, and about having that real, difficulty. You're talking about your marriage. In my experience, only positive has come out of real difficulties. Only, I am who I am now because of those difficult times that I managed to work through. And if I didn't have those difficult times that I managed to work through, and thankfully with help from many, many people that I was lucky to come across along the way. But if I didn't have those difficult times, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't connect with my students. I wouldn't have all these great people and watching their stories, because I wouldn't know how to relate to them. I wouldn't know how to relate to you. So I actually look at difficult times now, almost not. I mean, sometimes they're actually, oh my God, I can't do this one. But there is always a sense of, I wonder what's on the other side of this bad boy. You know what I mean? When they're really bad, it's like, wow, what's coming? This could be amazing. You know, like they're real. When you're young, you just don't believe that, but it is so true.
Yeah, that's right. The path to life is fraught with mountains and monsters and valleys and crevices and treacherous rivers and people that will rip you off and rob you and deceive you. You require wisdom, insight, knowledge, but every encounter strengthens you. But if you approach that with that mindset that I will learn through this, I would do an activity with young people when I was working in, and also when I was working in rehab. We'd do an activity where they would talk about, okay, tell me about something that occurred that really caused you some distress, right? And they'd think about it. And then I'd say, jump down what you learned from that event. Firstly, write down, the part that you played in that event. Sometimes you may have been the recipient of an event. Sometimes you may have been the cause of it. You need to identify that, but what did it teach you? So that you don't see things as a problem, but it's an opportunity for growth. So I would try to instill that. That was instilled in me. So when I encounter a difficulty, I think, okay, I need to sit back, think, and look at a strategy to avoid it. Also have a think of what took me to this point. Okay, I went off the path a bit. So you learn to identify the path you're walking on, to preempt it. That teaches you that. But also, okay, I'm in it now. What can I do to overcome it? What is the solution? What can I learn from it? How can I grow? When you have that mindset, then it's no longer a problem, because life is hard. Life is not easy.
Yeah.
I think it was one of our politicians who said that. Life wasn't meant to be easy. Unfortunately, he was right.
It would not have been popular with the people.
No.
People don't want to hear that life's hard. They want to hear, I will make life easier for you. I will give you, I'll kiss your babies.
Yeah.
So,
it was Malcolm Fraser. He said that. I remember
yeah.
thinking, what an ass,
You're right. Yeah.
But in retrospect, he was right.
Yeah.
Life is hard. It's not easy, but it can become an incredible adventure. And it become joyous. Yes, some people might have it easier than others. Others are born into situations that are really detrimental, and that's true. So we have two choices. We either give in, give up, and allow the situation to consume us, shape us, destroy us until there's nothing left, or we can rise. We can rise and we can fight. So it's knowing how to fight, when to fight. That's another thing you learn in martial arts. There are times when you have to, I was told that you need to be like a reed in the wind and bend with the wind, or stand, sometimes immobile and strong. To know when to stand and fight things that are non-negotiable, and when to bend, to allow things to go past. Like at work, many people get involved in stuff that dramas, they let it go by. In judo or in martial arts, if someone is throwing a fist in your face, you don't meet the fist with your face. You actually move to the side. You parry, you'd redirect. So you redirect it, but also study its intentions. Was that person intending to break my nose, or was it a sparring match? Were they intending to hurt me? Well, then maybe what did I do to upset them? Change what you're doing, or move away from that individual, that situation. You know what I mean? Like, examine every confrontation, every situation, every problem or issue or crisis is a battle, is an opponent that you need to overcome.
Yeah. What you just said is, it just reminded me that the beauty of what we're talking about, martial arts.
Yeah.
I would also say art, but especially martial arts is that you don't just theorize. Yeah. You actually feel it. Like if you don't dodge, if you don't move your face, you learn, because it really hurt.
Yeah.
And you go,
I
need to not be stubborn here and just move. Because if you're just talking, how many times you go, well, I don't agree with you, and then it's the same as just getting punched in the face.
It's going to damage the relationship.
You've got to let go. You've got to let go.
It's like being punched in the face. It's very true. And this is where you learn to know when to let go. When to let go. It's like a matador confronting a bull. By the way, they don't kill the bulls anymore. They don't stab them, which is really good. But a matador, and the new matadors are a next level. They not only dodge the bull, they'll flip over the backs all over the bull. It's incredible. But a matador does not have the power to take a bull head on. It'll just wait for the last moment and redirect its attack, and eventually it'll tire out and I've had enough. I can't get this person. So we need to know when to redirect. And that means stop our bullshit. Stop. If I'm antagonizing someone and that person is hurting me, then stop doing what you're doing. Let it go. Disconnect. People don't know how to disconnect. They want to, they're like a dog with a bone.
Yeah.
They won't let go of an issue that is superfluous, that is ridiculous, that is unessential. Is it essential that I hold on to this bone? Is it important? Sometimes it's purely about pride. Is not what is right. So we need to identify, is it pride or is this the right thing to do?
Yeah.
Like sometimes we need to stand for those who are oppressed. We need to stand for what is just, but we need to be sensible and know what our place and what right we have in that situation.
Yeah. There's a sense of people want to be right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that creates big problems.
Yeah.
And there is always something that we don't know.
Yeah.
So actually the funny thing, and you would have experienced this as well, the more educated you become, the more you study, the more educated people you hang around with, the more you realize there's a lot more that I don't know. And so you'll say things always with a degree of, I think this is true up to this point, but I am open to the idea that this might change one day.
Yes. As new information presents itself, then correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And it does allow you. One great thing about education, there's a lot of things that are annoying about education. Things have changed. Degrees are very different. They used to be something very prestigious. Now everyone has to have a degree. However, the great thing about education is that your mind gets more and more open.
Yeah.
The longer you stay and learn new things.
Yeah. Hopefully you develop a critical mind, the ability to analyze stuff. Okay. What is it? What is the basis of this information? Is it substantiated by verifiable evidence-based data? I do the work, I do the research, and I'm open to change. But knowledge is useless unless it's actually applied. And often when it's applied, you realize the truth of that knowledge. So for me, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is tried and tested. For me, in my journey, in my life, and in others, I've seen it either fail or work.
It's almost like finding the words to match what you already have seen happen.
And I find that this way of being, those who have adopted it have been able to transition from a place where they're barely surviving to where they're actually thriving and then able to create an impact positively in the world and be of use. And that stuck with me. I once went to a seminar many years ago and listened to an Austrian bodybuilder by the name of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he talked about his father saying, why are you doing this bodybuilding? You need to do something that is useful. And that stayed with him. So he feels now when he became a governor and now in life, he tries to do things that are useful, tries to impact positively on people. It's not so much about him. Even when he was a movie star, he said that was about entertaining, but it was also about him. So he shifted and took on board what his old man has said to him, whatever you do, make sure it's useful. It is useful, not just to you, but it's useful to others, to our society, to our community.
Yeah.
And I come from a collective culture where what we do impacts on the family. So I'm mindful of the decisions I made, even though I rejected that and rebelled against that. We need to be mindful of that. Like warriors know that they're not a lone warrior. They need to be part of a community, Spartan warriors, I also studied warrior cultures. Spartan warriors were so efficient, so effective, not just because of their ridiculous training, but it's also their ability to work as a team, that your actions will impact on, the life of another. So when we're mindful of what we do and how it impacts on others, we're more cautious in the steps that we take and the path we follow or we walk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We can see further, I guess. We can see the ramifications, the ripples we once all we thought about was the stone hitting the water, but now we've
beyond
seen
the
we've
ripples
seen.
in the pond.
Yeah.
To look beyond what you can see,
Mm.
to look almost into the future.
Mm.
If I do this, you have a sense of the ramifications and the ripples in the pond that'll extend out into the generations. So how I worked with my children who now have children and how I impact on my grandchildren, I can see the value of that. I can see those ripples, in my grandchildren.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
a couple of them are teenagers now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking, actually, I hope that I'm looking as well as you look when I'm, can I say your age?
Yeah.
when I'm 69.
Yeah.
Because you look amazing. You
I feel good.
you're in rude health, as they would say, and you look like you're in rude health, and I hope that I can be, and I was just thinking, as you're getting to the later stages of your life, you look back, we've covered a whole bunch of stuff. What would you say is a great thing about getting to the other end of it? It's no longer in the early volatile, wild, young stage, and you're sort of now at the more peaceful, reflective stage by the sounds of it.
Sage, yeah.
The old sage.
This is the stage of the sage.
The stage of the sage, yeah.
I'm able to draw on experience. I know what worked and I know what didn't work. So I can look down the passage of time and see the choices that I made. Those were good, those that are bad. I'm also happy of the choices I've made, but now I'm able to actively instill and impart this knowledge that I've gained that's been hard earned. So it doesn't come from a book. It is what I have experienced through blood and sweat and tears. And I know what works and I know what doesn't work. Yes, it is my perspective, but I've seen this applied in others. So now I'm able to, I guess, do stuff like this and input this knowledge that I've acquired over time. And to look back with fondness of the silly mistakes I've made, but how those mistakes made me stronger because I allowed those mistakes and those tragedies and those traumas and those crises to teach me, to strengthen me, to make me wiser. Because if I hadn't have learned from those things, then my life would have been a waste. And the people that I've been able to, I look back and I often encounter those that I've impacted on over the years. And the validation makes me think, yeah, I was on the right track.
Yeah.
That was the right path to take.
Yeah.
Because that person is now taken that on board and grown and evolved. And it's not just surviving, they're thriving and inputting and creating something better in their own life and ultimately in the lives of the people they have a sphere of influence over. So I have a sphere of influence. I have a sphere of influence that I need to be accountable to and for in terms of impacting this positivity, this way of being that is based on the virtues of the warrior and a moral code that is about compassion and empathy and allowing people to choose their path, but as long as their path does not take away the rights of others. So that's the other thing too. The path that I encourage people to choose has to be one that is of their own choosing, but also one that does not take away the rights and freedoms of others. And that it puts back and it gives and makes the place better than what they left it. Because that's all that can be asked of anyone. Leave the place, when you leave this earth, leave it better than what you left it. That's all I can say. And that's all I can ask of people. So, yeah, pretty much it.
Yeah. Joe, thanks for coming down.
Pleasure.
Thanks for joining us in the Yudhaversity studio.
And we had some fun in those early days.
We really had some fun. It was. It's always great to catch up with you. And the sun's just come out behind us, so so we're getting the blessing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All
right. Good.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Warriors of peace, strength without rage. If this helped, share it with someone who needs it.